Have you suffered from a trauma? If you're new here, my name is Laura, and in this video I'm going to share some things that I learned about trauma and how to start healing from it. Now, before I begin, I need you to know that I am not a trauma expert. I am not a therapist or a psychologist or any kind of medical professional, so please keep that in mind when you're watching this video. The information provided in this video is truly based on only my own personal experience, and it is intended for general information purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. So if you or someone you know is experiencing a trauma, please seek professional help or consult some sort of qualified medical professional. Now, before I get started, I want to say that I was in the midst of depression and couldn't see a way out. And in addition, I somehow created this identity of a traumatized person. And what I mean by that is that it was all I could think about. It was all I could talk about, because the vast majority of people in my life weren't taking it seriously. So I felt like I had to constantly remind them, like, look at me, I'm suffering over here. I need you. And the more they told me to just go out and date and get a job and have fun, or question why I wasn't doing those things, or the more they stopped interacting with me, the more I felt like I needed to remind them of my pain. I was completely alone in my sadness. But now that I'm on a healing journey, and I can see all of this much more clearly. But if you're in the midst of it, I understand you, I see you, and I'm sending you so much love. So let's get into this. Now, again, I'm not an expert. The experience I have is twofold, both the experience of parenting a traumatized child and also my own personal experience. And it was bad. Trauma almost broke me, almost broke her, almost broke us. Now, according to Bessel Kolk, the author of The Body Keeps the Score, he says that trauma is not the specific event, but how you respond to it. How you respond to it. Well, I, for one, was angry and overwhelmed. I was feeling despondent, hopeless. I couldn't stop crying. I cried every day for months. I was wallowing in depression. I ate and gained a ton of weight. I stopped working out. My hair started falling out. I stopped dating. I stopped going out. Things just weren't fun anymore. I was extremely depressed. I developed anxiety and eventually PTSD. I started getting chronic nosebleeds and disassociating. I couldn't work, I couldn't sleep, and all of this was happening right after I moved to a new city, so I had no friends or family to help me through. Now, Bessel Kolk says that people will respond to trauma differently. Well, you see, it's subjective depending on your personality and prior experiences, but a huge component is who is there for you at that particular time. Because if your relationships are intact, you can manage a lot of trauma. And this was why it was so hard for me personally. My job was completely insensitive and unsupportive. I felt so let down and betrayed by people who I thought were friends, my colleagues. Thankfully, I had a couple of local friends who checked in on me from time to time. But all of my other friends and family lived over 1,000 miles away, and they didn't really understand. I did not feel heard or understood. Instead, I felt judged, and like everyone was downplaying the severity of my experience, I felt so alone. It was absolutely brutal. I became a shell of my former self, and I contemplated ending it all. But I'm a single mom of a child who was also struggling with her own trauma, and I was the only one that could help her. My daughter came to me through adoption, and I just could not bring myself to orphan her for a second time. So due to the immense love that I have for my daughter, and by the sheer grace of God, I garnered enough strength to get her the help that she needed. So she's getting help. She's doing well now. Hallelujah. Praise God. But then who was going to help me? I couldn't afford what I knew was going to work, like EMDR, neurofeedback, or these recommended therapists. So all I could do in the moment was rest. And I'm exceedingly grateful that I was able to take time for myself. I didn't go back to work. I basically laid on the couch for 6 months straight. That is not an exaggeration. It was all I could do. Rest, sleep, cry, pray, eat, and repeat. But they say trauma changes your brain and can devastate your physical health, so I couldn't continue to ignore it. So I started to research. What could I do to help myself? Well, the first thing I did was travel. I went to Mexico for 10 days. Beaches for me are so calming and healing. The sound of the waves, the salt water in the air, the sunshine, putting your feet in the sand like soil or dirt is so calming and is known to really help your nervous system. And I noticed it right away. It was tremendous. But Bessel Kolk, this leading trauma expert, names 6 ways that he thinks are the best ways to get help if you have suffered from a trauma. They are psychotherapy, psychedelics, neurofeedback, yoga, theater and movement, and EMDR. Now, you're probably familiar with therapy, so I won't go into detail about that. And trust me, I tried therapy, but I couldn't find a good therapist. Not to mention that they're pretty expensive. Where I was, they were $100 to $200 an hour. Keep trying, they said. Keep trying, you'll find a good one. But after 8 or 9 therapists, I just gave up. I tried male, I tried female, older, younger. I just gave up. Now I know that people find great therapists and have great results. So I'm happy for them, but it did not work for me. Next is neurofeedback. Now, neurofeedback is when sensors are placed on your scalp to detect the electrical signals, and during a neurofeedback session, the individual engages in specific activities or exercises designed to influence the brainwave patterns. And when the individual's brainwave activity moves towards a desired pattern, they receive positive feedback so that eventually the brain learns to self-regulate and produce more of these optimal patterns. Now, I definitely considered this, but it is not cheap, nor is it easy to find. So I wasn't able to do that one. But the next one is yoga. Now, yoga helps regulate the nervous system, which trauma can disrupt. And your trauma can be stored in your body as physical tension or stress or blocked energy, which yoga can help release. And the great thing, of course, about yoga is that there are so many good yoga practitioners online. So you don't even have to pay to go to a yoga studio if you're on a budget. And what I find that goes along with yoga is breath work, because so often you're told to focus on your breath to remain more present and to deepen that mind-body connection, to promote mindfulness and relaxation. So the breath work is something that I started doing when I was in the midst of my suffering. And I found that it was really easy to do because I could pretty much do it anywhere. I could do it at a traffic light, or when I was listening to music, or when I was falling asleep. Now, I tried 2 different patterns. One is what the Navy SEALs call box breathing, in for 4, hold for 4, and out for 4. And the other one was created by Dr. Andrew Weil from the Center of Integrated Medicine in Tucson, Arizona. And that's the one that really resonated with me. Sorry, I had to fix it. It's actually in for 4, hold for 7, and then out for 8. And I prefer Dr. Weil's, and I find, for me, it gives me an instant sense of calm, or calmer, at least. Now, the next one's very interesting, theater and movement. Certainly, you may have heard that exercise, the movement part, is beneficial due to the endorphins, those feel-good chemicals that can flood your body and improve your mood. But theater? Apparently, he recommends Shakespeare in particular. Play a king, feel like a king. Play a queen, and feel like a queen. Well, I find this so fascinating because for me, travel is what helps me, and what helped me so much with starting my healing process. Travel as theater, right? I think these are so similar because you're kind of playing a role in both. After months, after I returned from Mexico, I spent 5 weeks in Portugal, and it was intended as a scouting trip because I'm considering moving there. But after months of suffering from PTSD, I was really pleasantly surprised at how healing it was. I was like a completely different person when I was there, confident enough to enter into a place on my own or navigate the metro or make new friends. And all this was so amazing to me as someone who is inherently shy. But I was in a new city, so I was acting differently and thus aiding in my healing process. I found that so incredibly fascinating. Travel as therapy. All right, finally, EMDR. Now, I was also very interested in trying this, still am. EMDR stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. And during an EMDR session, the therapist guides the client through a series of bilateral stimulations, meaning activating both sides of the body or both sides of the brain alternately, such as eye movements or hand taps or auditory tones, while the client focuses on the traumatic memory or the distressing experience. And while the client is focusing on that, the therapists have them track their eyes back and forth while following their hand or a light, or they may tap on the client's hands or shoulders, alternating between the left and the right side, or the therapist may give them headphones to put on and deliver different sounds alternating between the left and the right ears. And somehow it makes the client look at the trauma from a different perspective and cope with it better. I mean, isn't that fascinating? Just these bilateral cross-body movements. I was so interested in this, but EMDR is like $200 a session. And I still may try it because sometimes you only need as few as 6 sessions in order to see results. But then I started thinking, it's really just about cross-body movements. So maybe I could implement some of that into my daily practice. So I started researching, and I discovered there are several cross-body movement exercises that can actually be beneficial. Cross-body tapping is when you sit comfortably and you use your right hand to tap on your left shoulder, and then tap your right knee, and then take your left hand and tap your right shoulder, and then tap your left knee, and then repeat. This alternating pattern is supposed to be very calming. Another thing you can do is grab your opposite earlobe. So sit or stand comfortably, be very relaxed, reach your right hand across your body and grab your left earlobe between your thumb and fingers, and then take your right hand and cross it on top and grab the other earlobe. And you just gently apply pressure to your earlobes, holding them between your fingers and thumbs. And take slow, deep breaths. Allowing yourself to focus on the sensation and that cross-body connection. You can also do cross-body marching. While you're standing or sitting, you can lift your right knee and touch it with your left hand, and then lift your left knee and touch it with your right hand, and continue that alternating pattern as if you're marching in place. And then finally, you can do cross-body reaching. So just stand with your feet shoulder width apart, extend your right arm diagonally across your body, reaching, and as if you're reaching for something on a shelf, and then do the same thing, and just return to the midpoint before you reach again, just back and forth and back and forth. Honestly, it gives you a sense of calm in the moment. If you're feeling, even just with like anxiety, just try it. Give yourself a moment. And it does help calm you down. And apparently, these cross-body movements are really good for trauma. Because, as I understand it, cross-body movements can help integrate the right and left hemispheres of the brain, which can support the processing of traumatic experiences and promote a sense of connection and safety in the body. So these are just some of the things that I have done that have personally helped me process my trauma and PTSD, in conjunction with lots and lots of prayer, extended travel, and significant amounts of deep restorative rest. So I hope this video was helpful. Friends, I know how hard it is. I'm sending you so much love on your healing journey. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.